everyone, welcome to In Pursuit of Our Roots, Chapter 1, Part 3. We're going to really just end Chapter 1. Today I have Jackson with me. Sadly, Carrington and Christian and Destiny cannot be with us today. They have other things that they need to take care of, but we're still going to have an amazing conversation today. So I do want to give you guys a heads up today in the ending of Chapter 1 that we're finishing up, that we are going to be talking about suicide. And just if that just triggers you or anything like that, like I know a lot of people's mental health during this time that we're in with COVID-19 and everything else that's happening in the world. I really just want you guys to just consider your mental health, and if like talking about suicide or anything like that is triggering for you, like I just ask that you just keep your mental health in mind and just take a step back, and like it's okay. We're talking about it at the very end, so you won't be like missing that much, but just keep your mental health in check. So let's get started with Chapter 1. So Part 3. So in the beginning, when it's talking about like the long middle passage, it's talking about like all the African raids and how African raiders would go into African villages and like they would take men, women, and children, and they were like free people besides like prisoners of wars that were given to African slave traders and things of that nature that I can't really comprehend. And it goes on to say, it talks about a lot of Equino. It was around, what was it, like the 1700s, like 1745. And he was like the son of like a village leader. And he talks about when he was captured, how while they were on their long journey, how he's like never seen like this part of like the coast or anything like that. Like he was like in amazement, but at the same time, like he was like captured. Like when you were reading about him and his like description on like what he was seeing, Jackson, like what did you think? Like for me, I was just like, if only it was amazing if like he wasn't captured and like he wasn't going to be like on a slave ship or anything like that. Like how amazing it would just be to like look at this like new, like kind of just be amazed at like the land that you live in and stuff. Like he's seeing it while going down to the coast to be traded off. Like that's not something I would ever imagine in my life, but
yeah, that's not the best moment for looking out into the distance, sadly. But I think personally, it's really saddening to see. It's like, it's the thing that really stuck out to me was in another part, kind of relating back to this. Another man, he was the African ships pulled in, and he sees them and he thinks like, this is what the white men must worship. This is what they must use to worship because it's so grand. These huge ship coming into and docking onto their island, and it's just like, if I saw something like that, I'd be absolutely amazed. These massive things, because they were big ships, they could carry over 100,000 people, and it's like to see these grand things coming into view. And to only realize that this would be your demise. Oh my gosh. It leaves me speechless. It leaves me speechless. Like I could never relate to that. I could never really put myself in that kind of shoe. It's just so sad.
you know. So the book mentioned like the word like coffle, and I just want to read the definition of it. Coffle is a variety of brutal restraints that include sets of iron collars and chains that strung the slaves together, and also interconnected wooden yokes. And I'm like, what in the world is a wooden yoke right now? Like, what is that? And I looked it up, and it's a wooden beam normally used between a pair of oxen or like other animals. So like the beam on like an oxen, like just a wooden beam, and like one oxen's right here and like the other oxen's right there, and like they have some type of like iron like around their throats to like keep them connected to like the being. Like that's what they were like doing with like the slaves and stuff, and when they were like captured. And imagining that, like I kind of imagined like just seeing it, and like we seen like a picture in the book of like what a coffin kind of looks like, but I can't imagine like being in a coffin like that being around my neck, and like what if I like tripped, like I'm connected to someone else, and like if I trip that person also trips as well, and to probably be like beaten and stuff like that, and you're also like connected to like other people. Like I find that very demoralizing in a sense. It's like the coffle system just in itself, just that way. It just seems very like demoralizing if I was a man, woman, or even like a child, just to be put in like a coffle.
And honestly, it really does show how they viewed us. They really didn't view us as humans. They viewed us as true animals, and they treated us like that. You know, they put us in the coffins. They treated us like the ox to really show that they don't care about us. They don't view us like humans, and they didn't treat us like humans. And that's really what that reflects to me. It's just the cruelty of what was happening. And they just be stuck like that. And especially like when you go later on in the chapter and they're stuck and just crammed in these tight spots. And you know, they don't care about your family. They're not trying to put you with your family. No, your mom's all the way over here, your dad's up ahead, and you're right here, far away, and everyone's separated. So now you're by. And the thing was, did you see like in Roots, the crazy part was how they had I forget his name. I forget the main character's name, but they had the main character, right? He was crammed into the boat, and he was right next to another guy, if I'm correct. And they didn't speak the same language, you know. So none of them knew how to speak to each other, and they did that on purpose. So no one could really like get some form of communication on us because they didn't want us, you know, rising up in the boats. And it's just things like that, and how they keep us separated was really just to make sure that we were fully oppressed and we really did feel low, like we could not do anything, truly helpless.
I can't just help but think like the confusion in it all, because the
Mm-hmm.
book does mention like even like your countrymen, like their countrymen, who they like would think, at least, even if like we don't speak the same language, but like you know what's about to happen to me, like you would like come to my aid and be like, no, not today. Like let's like take these people back, give them like back to like their villages and like their families. But like
Mm-hmm.
none of that happened. It was actually the complete opposite. Like if some of them even like ran away and like they like kind of came in contact with their like countrymen, like they would like send them right on back for like some type of like price or anything like that that the Europeans or like other African traders would like give to them. And it's just really sickening. I think the most sickening part was when the book mentioned this 13-year-old boy named Samuel. Um, Samuel Hofer. He's only 13 years old, and it talks about his journey leading up to like being like traded. And he mentions in the book he was like on this canoe, and like they were traveling up the coast, and like it's his first time seeing the river. Like imagine just like 13 years old and like your first time seeing the river. Like I would be like, oh my gosh, like I had like no idea this river existed. Like I want to go explore. No, Samuel's thinking I should jump off this canoe and like drown myself. That way I don't have to go through this like horrendous ordeal that I know I'm about to go through. But the fact that he was so frightened of the river that like he couldn't like jump off the canoe and like drown himself in the water, it just goes to an extent to like show you that like a 13-year-old boy shouldn't have to like think about killing himself at
Mm-hmm.
all in the slightest, and that just like looking at a river, and like usually like when you see rivers or anything like that and like just nature, you're just like in awe because you're looking at like the surroundings and stuff. Like, oh my gosh, this like looks so pretty. But the thought like a 13-year-old boy can think that and think like my life's about to be, it's about to get rough, like horrendous, and just thinking about killing himself in that way. And that's how a lot of Africans thought, like just plain old like let's jump in the ocean or like let's jump in the river and like just drown ourselves. And like that was literally the only escape for them because they knew like slavery would be like kind of worse than death. And that's just, it was just something that I just couldn't like comprehend.
Mm-mm. And you know, like when we were 13, that's like 8th grade, right?
Yeah,
Like, what were you doing when you were in 8th grade? You know, it's you were a kid. Like, you really didn't know much about the world, and to just know that your life is going to be your whole life, the rest of your life, and that's like the next 40, 50 years, right? It's going to be absolutely just nothing but hell. True hell is the most terrifying thought that I've had. I can't imagine. It's like, take for instance, like now, if me and you had this, if we had to go through that, and we got captured, and we knew our life was going to be hell for the next 50 years, you know, I would have the same thought, to be honest. And that's the sad thing. And it's no 13-year-old, and you were right in saying this, no 13-year-old should have to go through that. And they didn't see him as a 13-year-old boy. They saw him as an animal, you know. They saw him as a true animal. And that's the sad thing. And, you know, he was probably crying. He was sad. He was upset. Absolutely. But they didn't care.
I didn't.
They didn't care at all.
The book goes on to talk about the barracoons and how they were like temporary like barracks or like sheds, and that's where like some of the captives like succumbed to like their infections or the infections that they were like exposed to by the Europeans because of like their diseases. Now, this one part in the book had me so livid because I feel this moment really reverberates through time itself until today. And it talks about usually that they had expectations, like they were like picky, like for you to like go on, I guess, into like the next round or like the next stage, like you had to be like 35 or like younger, and you had to like be in like perfectly good shape, like not have like any like diseases that they knew of, and like if you like broke a bone or had like some type of like imperfection, like they would not choose you or anything like that. But once they like stripped them off and they were like looking at them, the Europeans and African traders, they stripped them naked. And the book goes on to describe like they stripped them naked and like they started to literally inspect them. And in that moment, my mind couldn't help but like go to, if you're like a man, woman, or child, like just imagine yourself in that moment being like stripped naked, but also being so confused. Like I couldn't help but think in like a little kid's mind, like they're stripped naked and they're being like inspected. And of course, like I don't know what's going on, but like I'm probably sure, just in my opinion, that like they did touch them and stuff. And to think as a little kid, like a little African little boy or girl, to think like I'm not with my mom and dad, like I'm separated from them. I'm with a whole group of people who I don't know. And I'm confused because like we all don't speak the same language. Some of us do. And this white man is touching me and expecting me. And I'm just like, that child has been violated. Like that child has been violated. Like just an innocent child, like they've been violated. And it doesn't even have to be like in a sexual like sense. Like they have been violated. And going to like the men and like the women who had to strip naked, like men, in particular like men, like your self-confidence in yourself kind of starts to go down because like another man should not be like touching you like that for an inspection or anything. Like they should not be crossing over into like your personal space or anything like that. But they did that. They like touched the men and like they inspected them and demoralized them. And they did the same to the women. Like I really want people to understand like these people were violated. They were most definitely violated. Like yes, we hear about like the sexual violations by women for which like the book is going to mention later on. We are going to talk about that. But like this really does like reverberate through time. Like we are being inspected to make sure that we're perfect and complete, but like we're being violated at the same time. Like there's no sense of regard at all that like you are an adequate human being and that like you understand, like you've been educated, that you've been taught. Like no, that's completely like thrown out the window. And especially when it came to the Portuguese, the book mentions that the Portuguese were especially like picky. And it's downright disgusting because it mentions that they would sniff the captive's throats and that they would try to make them laugh. And they would guess male captive's age by licking or rubbing his chin to measure the amount of facial hair. Like, if my words of violation didn't like not ring out to you, like violation to like besides sexual, like violation, like no man should be licking another man's throat just to see like just to inspect you. Like my skin crawls to think what those men thought. And to know that like there are other countrymen that were captive, like saw this happen to them as well. Like it's disgusting. Like it angers me to think that like they were so violated by this. Like they were so violated. And it gives me even more angry because children were involved in this too. And like they were violated, but they were all confused at the same time, even though they knew what was gonna happen to them if they all survived this ordeal. But like it disgusts me.
That was a lot right there. And you were totally accurate with everything you were saying right there, completely. I completely agree with you totally. And to go back to the animal reference we were using, you know, they expected us literally like animals, like literally like animals, like when a farmer goes to sell his cow to like a meat packaging, and they inspect the cow to make sure the meat's good, it looks healthy and is in the right order. They inspected us in the exact same way. They did not care that we were human. They did not care that we looked like them. Simply because our skin is different than theirs, they did not look at us like humans and they treated us as such. They made jokes out of us. They demoralized our men and they violated our women. And it is sickening to say the least to come to that conclusion, because I really want people to think about this. Think about your family, your mom, your dad, your sister, your niece, your nephew, your son and daughter, just having to go through this process. And that's just to get on the boat. Like the journey hasn't even began. There's so much more hell to go through after this. This is just the beginning. And this is how they started.
It's just insane. Um, this one guy in the book called Jar Bourbon. He was an agent of the French Royal African Company, and he noted, I'm just going to say again, that they only took like healthy slaves. But
Mm-hmm.
what they also did is that they marked them, like
Mm-hmm.
how, like, just to give you like a vision, like my dad, he likes to watch like Western shows and stuff like that. Like he's that type of like guy. But like sometimes on like the Western shows, like you see how like they brand cattle. That way like other like ranchers know like, hey, this cattle belongs to like this ranch. And that's what they did to the Africans, that they would brand them before they got on the boat. That way, like the sailors and the slave traders would know, like, okay, like this African belongs to like the French, and like this African belongs to like the Dutch, and like this African like belongs to like the English. Um, I don't know how you would feel if you felt branded. Um,
Imagine how
it,
painful just alone, like
yeah,
hot metal touching your skin, like a true burn. Oh my God.
but it
It's
also goes to show that it was just the beginning of just being branded. Like in today's
mm-hmm.
world, African Americans are already branded when it comes to men to be like dangerous
Mm-hmm.
and to be like monsters or like thugs, and for women to be branded as like baby mamas or that crazy black woman over there, or
Bloods and
and
thoughts.
yeah, like to be branded like. And it's very different from, not saying like we're the only race that has like ever been like branded, but of
Of
course
course.
there's other like races that like have like different stereotypes against them.
Mm-hmm.
But to be branded, like to know that this is not this is not something that you want
Mm-hmm.
at all. This is not something that you chose, or this is not something that like you believe in at all. And to feel incapable of doing anything, I think that is the word that just pops into my head, to be like incapable of doing anything during this time period. Not saying that we can't like do anything in like this time period that we're in the 21st century, but for them to feel like incapable, like being branded, like to be marked by something that just shouldn't have any claim to you at all. Like, just shouldn't have like any claim to you. Like, you are your own person, like you yourself and I and stuff like that. Like, can you imagine just being like branded? Like, just someone like coming up to you and they're like, okay, like we're about to like brand you, and like they brand you, and like that pain, like that mark, like it doesn't go away. It just doesn't. It just
That's
forms
for life.
on the skin. Like it's a lifetime. Like it's a lifetime scar. Like these are traumatizing events.
They are. They truly are. And you know me, I'm scared of needles already. So I can't imagine being branded. I really, oh, you see me shivering over here just thinking about that. And I think I really liked what you were saying about how you related it to today. And the physical branding from then has moved to a mental branding that is today. You know, they still see us with this brands. It's not made, it's not physically on us, besides our skin, of course. It's like in their minds. They already have it branded in their heads. People are raised to view us in a certain light. And it slavery hasn't changed. It's evolved, as everyone says, you know, and it really is true. Going back to the physical branding of the past, treating us like cattle is an accurate description, you know. It's like, and it's not just adults being branded, it's kids, it's babies being branded too. Everyone gets branded when you get onto the ship and stuff. So it's just not like, you're probably thinking, like when I thought of it, I thought of it as like an adult being branded, you know. But you know, to really think about a kid, like think about if you're 5 and that happened to you, just this whole process is so traumatizing. Every last step of it. Ugh, I have no words, to be honest. I have no words. Just the first step.
Like, I just want people to imagine, like, today, like, if just on either side of, like, your chest, and you got branded for every single stereotype that another race branded you for, and you went to bed and you woke up the next morning, and you're getting ready, and like you look yourself in the mirror and you see all these brands that do not represent you but has been given by others on you. Like, I want you to really think about that, and like think about like how that scars your skin, but also like that is a permanent reminder for like you to remember that like this is your place. Like, it was a definite like thing, like telling them like this is your place, like this is your role, to think about that. And
Mm-hmm.
like that even goes into like today's world too. Like it is a reminder when you hear like stereotypes, or just being branded by these stereotypes, that like people are saying like you are a thug, like you are a baby mama, you are a thought, you are a crazy black woman, you are a gangster, you are dangerous. It's like saying to like the black community today, like this is who you are in society, and like don't you dare even think about stepping out of these like stereotypes that like we put you in. Like this is how you are defined,
Mm-hmm.
and things of that nature. Like, of course, like everyone in the black community, they're just like, nah, this does not define me at all. And like, I'm really happy that we like break in from these stereotypes, but like these stereotypes are still here today. And it's just a reminder from the past, from this, to like remind people when it comes to just your mind mentally and of just unconsciously a little bit, that like this is your structure in this society, like this is what you are meant to be in this society, that you are below everyone else, like you are the scums of the earth, really, and that like you work for us, like don't get it twisted. And that just really needs to be like broken in its entirety, because it's still there a little bit, as we're fighting what we're fighting through right now in the 21st century, for equality and everything, and for police reform and defunding the police and everything like that. Like, it's literally a crying voice saying that your little hierarchical pyramid and stuff, like, let me come up in there and like tear some of this down for you real quick. And like, let's get real one on one. Because it just can't be like that anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Going on for one subject, it's talking about on the slave coast. And one quote that Olato said was that he felt that he has been brought into a world of bad spirits, and that they were going to kill him. That one quote, I'm just like, he's not wrong. Like, they weren't going to kill him, but things on his journey could have killed him, most definitely. And if those things didn't kill them, then the life that he was going to endure, like, that was going to be worse than death itself. But um, it kind of made me like smile a little bit, because a lot of the Africans, they thought that the white man, that they were like cannibals, and that they ate all the other white people, and that they came over to their land because like they needed flesh to eat. And if I was them, I'd probably think the same thing. I'm like, well, we about to get eaten up in here, and like
They inspecting us, like don't want no
literally,
bad.
literally, like you said, like
Literally.
cattle, like meat.
Hmm.
Like you would think that, like, okay, like I could die, but I could die by being getting eaten by these people, and ooh, like no.
Hmm. And you know, it really does. Oh, you were about to say. I'm sorry, I cut you off.
Oh no, you're good. Like I can.
Okay, but, but you know, talking about the cannibalism they feared, you know, that goes back into African culture. They talk about how they had fears of foreigners coming in and eating them, which is really interesting, you know, fears of
Mhm.
other people coming in and eating them, because cannibalism is an interesting fear to have. But honestly, you know, these just it sounds crazy nowadays to me and you, of course, because you know we're in today's age. But going back then, seeing these people you've never seen before, they looked like aliens to them, most likely. Like that's really how I feel, you know, because everyone in Africa, yes, we're all different shades and colors and stuff, but just you know, these people coming in with clothes you ain't never seen before, styles you ain't never seen before, coming in with these weapons that can just take you out in one hit. I'd probably think that aliens trying to eat us too, to be honest.
I know. It kind of just like makes you think a little bit. We like kind of have to remember that in African culture
Mm-hmm.
that very different from like the Europeans, like very
Yeah.
different. Like the Europeans um, believe more like Christianity and like the Pope and like Catholic, and while Africans like they believed in like the earth and the spirits of the ancestors.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just going on to like what you said, like they've never seen these people. Like these the Europeans, like the Africans, like they've like never seen each other. And if we go all the way back to the book, like it talks about Prince Henry the Navigator and how he sent over a vessel because he was curious about these people. He's like, who are they? And everything like that. So it also just recuperates for them that they were just thinking like, who in the world are these people? Like, we don't know like who they are, what they're doing with us, especially.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it just goes on to like prove your point that it's just very different cultures and like very
Exactly.
different
And they didn't even
perspectives.
like, and they didn't even like speak the same language either. This was the language they've never heard of before, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Different tongues they've never heard before. So there's no way possible for them to figure out what is going on, you know? At least like with the village, at least, you know, like with the different tribes all being together, you know, they can probably piece together ideas of what's, you know, communicate decently between them. They have a better chance at that than ever understanding what the Europeans were talking about or what they're getting at or what they're planning.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
it says that the sailors on the boats that like the supervisors they really had to like supervise the Africans because like they still had like a little bit of hope when they got on the boat because they were just sailing on the African coast, and so like they could see the mainland. So there's hope that like, oh my goodness, like we can like see it, like we can do something. And
Mm-hmm.
while the sailors were like on the coast, like of course they encountered like pirates, and then they encountered different like European powers, and like they even encountered like different like African villages that like came on to attack them because they're like, you like captured like a free person, and like this doesn't make sense or anything
Mm-hmm.
of that nature. Um, I want to go into the topic of enslave the slave ships. Very,
It's it's gross and
it's
grim.
it's disgusting. It's really disgusting. It says
Mm-hmm.
that men, women, and children were packed nearly naked into ships designed to accommodate the maximum number of slaves in the least amount of space. And also, it talks about type packing, and what type packing is, it's the crowding of like human cargo that carried slaves on ships to maximize the profits. By contrast, loose packing involved carrying fewer slaves in better conditions in an effort to keep mortality rates lowered. It kind of just disturbed me a little bit that they're just all cramped in there together. Like they have no bathroom,
No
so
air.
no air either. So they're just pooping and peeing,
They're
and
their own excrement, literally.
like they're stepping on it, and like other people
Mm-hmm.
are stepping on it. Like in today's world, like of course, like we have toilets and stuff, but just like if you put me in that situation, I don't think I could make it. Like I would not make it. Like
Mm-mm.
I'm a little bit of a germaphobe. Like I'm not going to lie. I'm a little bit of a germaphobe. So if someone pooped right next to me and peed, like for me, being born in the 21st century, I would feel like, like you're
Mm-mm.
kidding me right now. Like
No,
you're
I completely
pooping,
understand you. Mm-hmm.
but like that doesn't go to the extent of like what they went through. Like these people were some troopers. Like I just want to say that like they were some troopers, even though they were forced on this journey and they were taken away from their home. But these were some troopers. Even if like some of them were depressed and had like suicidal thoughts and things of that nature, that these people were some troopers. I think if you took any person of today and you put them in their situation, none of them would make it.
No.
It's just being fortunate enough and
Mm-hmm.
like saying like thank goodness that like slavery is like over with and everything like that, and that we get to live in like our homes and like we have like a
Toilets.
toilet and like a shower, and we have air conditioning, and that we can like go outside and just like breathe the air. Like these people were in the worst condition possible. Like we would
Mm-hmm.
not make it. Like we would not make it. And if you think you could make it, I I I
I doubt it.
I doubt it. I doubt it. These conditions were rough, especially if like you're a child. Like the book mentions children, and to think that like children had to go through this as well, all by their own sometimes, because like their siblings or their mom and dads weren't there, and like they had to rely on like other people. Like it's disgusting. It's disgusting. It's like we're pigs. Like pigs wallow in their own like filth.
Feces. Mm-hmm.
Like that's what pigs do. And like we are treated like pigs. And like we can't help it. Um they were treated not like we of today, my bad, but like they were treated like pigs. They were treated like pigs.
Mm-hmm.
And it's insane.
So I really wanna double down on what you're saying and just like anyone of today, people complain about just walking into a bathroom and there's a nasty smell. Okay. People say, I'm going to die by this smell already. So just imagine being in that tight space. And this isn't for a week. This isn't for a day. This is for months, months on end with no air. You're just in there and that's all you can smell. Oh my gosh. And it's so filthy in there that, later on, in the chapter, they talk about diseases and things, the diseases that develop, simple diseases of today were huge killers of the past, truly, like scurvy. They talk about in the book that in 1773, a Dutch ship lost 89% of its 157 slaves to scurvy. Scurvy is not serious nowadays. You eat like, what's vitamin C, like oranges? Like you eat an orange and you're cool nowadays. But back then, since they were given no food, little water, it's a killer. And simple things like that would just be automatic killers. Things like smallpox that can be easily transferred all around the ship. measles, They talk about the biggest killer, which is dysentery. I literally looked it up right before this, I swear. I'm so sorry if I pronounce it. Dysentery. It's like, so basically it's a gastrointestinal disorder caused by inflammation of the intestines. They also called it the bloody flux. And I'm like, why did they call it the bloody flux? So then I actually Googled the disease. So it's basically you endure cramping and diarrhea with blood and mucus in your feces. And this was super common on there. That's what they're stepping on. That's what's in there. That's what's in the ship, covering it. And that'd be the biggest killer, because that disease, someone would catch it, then, they'd, of course, they'd have their excrement, someone else would step in it, catch the disease, and then you can see how it spreads like wildfire in there. And that just the smell. And I hate this, because I like things clean too. But just the smell of that, I can't even imagine. I wouldn't have made it, not even a week.
They mentioned the smell. They mentioned the smell, that it was absolutely horrific. Like, people on the shore could smell the stench on the boat. Like, just think about that. Like, just think about that. Like, to smell that smell all the time, but then you get desensitized to it too. But that horrific smell. Ugh. Anyway.
And it's like, also speak a little bit more about this, about like, people died on here too. Like Africans would die on there, and then you're stuck there. There's this image. I want to go back to Roots real fast, but there's this image of, I forget his name. Dang it, I almost had it this time. I don't want to mess it up. But the main character, he's had this buddy the whole time who's right next to him, and he's learning to communicate with him. And he dies on the way there. So then for the next month, he's stuck there, looking at his lifeless body. And that body smell. That's not pleasant to just be right next to it. See your own friend slowly, what's the word? Not disintegrate. What is it? Decompose. See your friend decompose down. That's
what happened on the ships. Like, someone would die of diseases, and it was talking about like the men, but that they were shackled to the boards of the ship. And they were shackled sometimes to one another, and if their companion died, like, they would be there for hours or even days. And I don't know how you would feel if you always turned around thinking like this person that like you've gotten close with on this journey, even though both of y'all don't want to go on it at all, but like you look down and you just see their dead body. You just see their dead body. Like, don't tell me that does not traumatize you at the end of the day, that like you saw this person go through this whole entire diseases like stages, and then like they die and they're there for a couple hours or days. Like, they're just there. Like, they're just there. And like some of them didn't even know how to comprehend it, because like they have like burial rituals, like in the different like villages and like cultures in Africa. Like, they had burial rituals, and like they couldn't even bury their dead the proper way. Like, they couldn't bury their dead. Like, most of the dead like tossed overboard and things of that nature. Like, if you can't comprehend that, to comprehend, like, let's say, like me and Jackson are like really, really good friends. Like, he's one of like my closest friends. And if we were on this journey together, and one of us died because of the like illness, and like one of us just looks at the other person on the floor, like, we would be traumatized. Like, I know I would be traumatized. Like, I would be thinking, oh my gosh, like the things going through my head, I'm like, this person has so much to live for if like we weren't in this like predicament at all. And it's kind of heavy. Like you think like, what if this person had like a family? And like the family will never know that
Not we
this
got there.
this man, woman, or child that they died on this ship. That they died on the ship and none of their family or loved ones were near them.
What a cold way to die. What
Like
a
the thought of dying alone should be like
is fear
sending
enough?
it should just be like sending like just the words should just be popping up in your head like dying alone. Like this is what dying alone truly means. Like in your own like dying alone. Anyway,
Mm,
um, this subject just gets really later than that.
good point. You were completely right in that, Sierra. Like completely. And like think about like for me personally, I'm gonna do this personally and just talk about like me and my mom.
Mm-hmm.
Men and women are separated the whole time they get there. So then when you get off the boat, constantly, say if I got off first, I'm constantly waiting my mom to come out, constantly waiting my mom to come out the boat. She never does. Think about what that feel like. Just put yourself in that position.
It's not a good one.
What are you gonna say?
I was gonna say that on these boats that men outnumbered women like 2 to 1, like the 2 to 1
Yeah.
ratio, but that children under the age of 15 became increasingly common over time. Like before 1700, it was only 12%, but by 1810, it rose to 46%.
Mm-hmm.
And that again, the book mentions, even though I already talked about it, that they were pinned to the floorboard over time, and they wore chains that like wear on the skin all the way down to the bone. It also talks about how they received exercise. Like this exercise was not optional at all, and it's called dancing slaves. And it was when like the African men or like women or children, like they were forced to dance to some type of African song or by the bagpipes by the European, but they were still chained. Like I want everybody to know this, like they were still chained while they were like dancing, and it was forced too. It's
Mm-hmm.
like forced entertainment for all the white Europeans on board, but they had to exercise too because like they didn't want them to get like these type of diseases or anything like that to keep on spreading. So like they made them exercise, but it's forced entertainment. Like it's sickening to think that they got pleasure from looking at these men and women just dance while they were still in chain, and like these chains like it went through the skin and went to the bone, like
Mm-hmm.
it went to the bone, like this hurt,
Mm-hmm.
like this hurt. It's just not something that you can just think like, oh, they were just dancing with their chains on and stuff. Like this hurt if
Mm-hmm.
their chains literally broke through their skin and went all the way to the bone. And to be forced to dance as well, just for like entertainment, like
Mm-hmm. And just to help paint the picture of, like when you get handcuffs, we've seen it, the marks you get after you take off these handcuffs. Think about these chains they had on them. Once they took off the chains finally, when they got off, think about what they saw. Think about the pain it is of jumping up and down to having these heavy chains hit your body, hit your legs, and bounce back and forth off your ankles. Just the pain that is as they hop around for the white man's entertainment. It is sickening to just
we also have to remember, like we also have to reiterate that like these people were on boats for a long period of time. Like it's just not days and weeks. Like they were on there for months.
months. This went on for months.
So
Like Think about, like, for us college students, think about your whole semester, this whole semester we went through with Corona and everything, and how long it all felt. That was their journey. That's the time frame. It was like 6 months. It was a long journey to get there.
It was. The book goes on to say that women and children were usually housed above deck than the men were, because, of course, the men were considered dangerous while the women and children were considered less dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
And I really want to paint a picture about the Black man and the African man in this, of being dangerous. Like, it kind of takes you back prior to reading the book and reading this little quote, that it kind of takes you kind of back to Jim Crow days. Like,
Mm-hmm.
of course, we weren't born in Jim Crow days at all. Like, probably some of our parents, and of course, our parents' parents were, and like how white actors would blackface themselves, and like they would portray the Black man of being dangerous, and that they raped women, and that for Black women, that they weren't dangerous, but that they were this sexual human being meant to like seduce like white men, and that white men would like rape them against their will. Like, it says in the book, that um, it says in the book that the men regarded as one of the perks of the trade was that they would go in and choose like an African woman, and that they would rape her, like one of the perks, like they would rape her against her will. And because there was like a language barrier, she had no idea what was going on until like actions spoke louder than the language barrier. And I really want to like put an emphasis that even though today, with like the Black man and them always getting shot by cops, like women women play a big factor in this as
Mm-hmm.
well. Um, and I'm really speaking to my sisters in my community when I'm saying this, that we played a big part in this history that we're telling you guys, and that we are not defined by what they tell us. Like, history is cruel. Like, this history is very upsetting to even talk about. And I know some of you guys are probably thinking like, these people keep on repeating some of like the same things, but you can't help but repeat that this was disgusting.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this is your history, and it's disgusting, and that you're already regarded for Black men to be dangerous, and that's just not the case. And that for women, that our bodies have been violated and like raped and molested since the beginning of this, and they still are today. And that Black men are being targeted and Black women are being targeted. It's not something that should be taken lightly today anymore. It's something that we as a culture, we are addressing, but it's also internal too, that like for women, that we can't keep on like tearing each other down, especially Black women, because we've come so far. Like, women played a big role in getting info for men while they were on the ships. Like,
Mm-hmm.
the book even mentions that in 1797, women instigated insurrection aboard the British ship Thomas by stealing weapons and passing them to men below, and that they engaged in hand-to-hand combat with the slave ship crew during several other riots. Like, my Black women, we are strong. Like, we are strong. and that it's proven in the book that like we are smart, we are valuable. Heck, they did hand-to-hand combat. Like, I don't know how you feel, but I'm like, okay now, like hand-to-hand combat,
Uh,
like,
this.
like, sorry for me like say this like word, but like we are some bomb ass women. Like we are some bomb ass strong women. Like I want everyone to know that. Like this is amazing. But from what I was saying, got a little bit too hyped
Oh,
there, I'm sorry.
yeah. No,
Got,
you're completely right in everything you're saying. I
I got a little
support
bit
you
too hyped
100%.
right there. But
It needed to be said. It needed to be said.
yeah, it needs to be said.
Yeah, it
It
does.
really does. But also, I really want to touch on the point with considering us dangerous
Mm-hmm.
because it kind of brings me back to I don't know, Justin, if you watched on Netflix the 13th Amendment that they have on there,
Haven't yet, personally.
but there's this one part where it talks about how like they made us fear one another,
Mm.
and is the concept that um, we fear each other because it can compare to like the different shades of brown, like the different shades of brown. That if I'm being like completely honest um in my life, and I am completely shameful and even thinking about that I thought about this at all. But I remember that my dad took me, um, he took me to Dallas. He took me on like the rundown side of town, and I was just like sitting in the car, and I saw this one black man. He was looking at me, and he wasn't doing anything, but I initially got scared. Like I'm just like, oh my gosh, this man's probably gonna like break through the window and he's like gonna grab me and stuff like that. But that wasn't the case at all. Like this man just looked at me, he just smiled and waved, and he went about his business and stuff. And to think that I was like afraid of this man who is African American just like me, to like even like think that in like the slightest, just a little bit, like it makes me really upset that I thought about it in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
But I was younger then. But it really goes on to say how much they made other people fear us, but how they made us ourselves fear one another.
Mm-hmm.
Even though we band together in such enormous waves and we do the impossible like we're doing right now. Like we're continuing like the civil rights movement. It's just
Mm-hmm.
today's era right now.
Mm-hmm.
Um, did you want to say something? Oh, okay.
To support you a little bit about what you were saying. I think it has to be said that me and you are both raised in good off families that do well, most definitely. And we are very blessed to have families like that. And I also had a moment similar to that when I was younger, you know, growing up. I grew up in St. Louis, so we'd often go to East St. Louis. And I remember this one time my dad was stopping at a bank to get some money because I think there was like a carnival or something going on in the city or
Mm-hmm.
something. And I had a similar moment with a black man. He was just minding his business, walking down the road, going to wherever he's going. And I was terrified, because your parents teach you, hey, be careful, be careful. You never know what can happen. And it's just like, these are normal people that are just going about their daily business. They're not going to press you anyway. They're not going to do any of that. It's just the paintbrush we painted them as, almost, if you get what I'm saying. That's how we see them, sadly. And
Kind of like if
that's
there's
a
a
learning lesson.
pressure.
Huh?
It's kind of like I was thinking kind of like if they're darker than like you, like a darker
Mm-hmm.
shade of like brown, like you initially like, fear because you're just like, oh my gosh, like
Mm-hmm.
kind of like feels like that just a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Like not to me personally, but kind of how they've kind of just got it into our heads on how we feel one another. Like if this person's darker than you, then like you should automatically fear them, even though they're black and you're black, even though that shouldn't be the case at all.
Mm-hmm.
Whites
And
don't fear whites, or like Asians don't fear Asians, and
oh yeah, it's in a lot of other cultures that have the exact same feeling towards each other. This is a very common. This isn't, I don't want to say common, but a fear that goes all around the world about different shades mean different things, you know. In the Middle East, I forgot the country. I think it's Lebanon. I want to say, but I don't. Yeah, Lebanon. The darker shades of people, you know, African. They have African maids and African butlers there. It's common in the West and the Eastern families to have like someone who takes care of them, like a housekeeper or something in their family. But they're often treated as they are treated as less than and less than human, second class citizens there. And that's all just because of their darker skin tones. And a lot of them are from Lebanon, been there for generations, but because of their darker skin tones, they are treated as such, like they are less than. And to speak a little bit about me and your experience, I think that it was a learning lesson when we were younger to recognize this, see that this is because our privilege and that we've been taught, and the things that the images that have been pressed on us because of where we come from, and to learn that's not the case, that we aren't, that just because someone comes from a certain light or a certain place in life does not mean they are less than, in no way, fashion, anything like that.
exactly.
Mm-hmm.
To conclude this conversation on the last topic, it talks
Mm-hmm.
about the hardships and the misery on board on the slave ships, and it does talk about suicide was very common.
Mm-hmm.
The slave ship crew really had to supervise African Americans because they were suicidal, and some of them just did not have the hope at all, um, that they would starve themselves. Like they would have, some of them had to be force fed, and kind of makes me like laugh because it brings back that John Barbach, and he considered himself a compassionate person, but then it goes on to say that he had to break some of the captives' teeth and like force feed them, and I was completely thinking, I'm like, this does not make you passionate.
That's
Like,
bone chilling, isn't it?
yeah, I'm like, to think he thought that he was passionate. I'm just like, ah, you were far from compassionate. Like, if you
Mm-hmm.
had compassion, you would turn that boat right around and be like, all right, guys, like, get out of here. Like, no, he thought compassion was that, okay, like, they're not eating, let me force feed them. That way they can stay alive. Like, these people had depression because of what they went through.
Mm-hmm.
And for them, like death, they thought with death, like death for them, like they would be rejoining the ancestors, like a better afterlife. Like there was some hope in like a better afterlife because they would be rejoining the ancestors. And some of them, like they jumped off ships with chains on them, and the chains dragged them all the way to the bottom, and they drowned. And like some of them tried to like hang themselves or kill themselves with the chains that were around them while they were like in like the slave holds in the ships. And it's disturbing to think that because it's men, women, and children too. Like
And mm-hmm.
kids thinking again about killing themselves shouldn't even be crossing their minds. What should be crossing their mind is like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
like this is what I want to do a couple years from now, or anything like that. And knowing that it's not a comforting feeling at all. It's not. Um, it's just not. But I'm gonna like
Mm-hmm.
Jackson.
And to just paint, just to go over everything we've been saying, this is just the beginning. I mean, just think about, put yourself in that boat. All the disgusting things we've been saying, all the nasty things we've been going over, that's what they had to endure for months. How could you not have depression? How could you hold on to hope when everything seems hopelessness? This is just the beginning. And they had no idea what was going on. They had no idea. They didn't know what was next. Imagine going through all this. You're on this boat filled with all this excrement. Imagine what you think that's coming next. Right? Where would your mind be? You know, just
Like
take yourself somewhere.
like battle after battle after battle
Mm-hmm.
after battle
Mm-hmm.
after battle.
So there is some, I don't want to say like, I'm not trying to make it sound like okay that they commit suicide, because suicide is never okay under any means. But you can have some empathy for what they're going through and why their actions were their actions because of the hell they were feeling. I can't even, like, this quarantine just already just has people down. Just being in your house locked up. Imagine being someone next to you tied up, locked up in a ship where you can't see no light until, and then when you do, and you do go up there, you're dancing for the white man.
You got to really just keep in your mind really that
It is.
this is no playing matter.
Mm-mm.
It's like scholars, like they predict and they think that only 10% of the Africans made it to the Americas. 10%. Like so many people on that ship, and so many people died of diseases. And
Sierra, do you remember the number from from earlier in the chapter about how many Africans made it to the Americas? There's a number. I think it was a couple million, right?
in total, like in the Americas, I think prior a little bit to
Mm-hmm.
um prior to North America with the 13 colonies, there were like 12 million.
12 million?
12 million. But that's with like every single European power. Like we're talking like the Spanish
Exactly.
and stuff like that
Mm-hmm.
to come. But there were a lot of people though. But also we have to consider that 12 million that like they repopulated and stuff. So
Mm-hmm. That's fair. That's fair. That's fair. But let's just take a small number of that, and even like 100,000. That's like, that means you started at 10%. You know, if we add that 90, and that's like, please math come through. But that's like, oh, I don't want to say it. I'm gonna get the number wrong.
it's like
That's like a million.
like
I'm
let's
not sure.
look
Right?
it up on the phone real quick.
You want to do it on the phone? I'm pretty sure it's a million. I'm an engineering major. This is why I don't want to do this. Let's see. Let's see. My calculator over there.
Like 10% of like 100,000, is that what you're asking?
Yeah,
Like
it's
that's
like a million,
10,000.
right? Huh?
It's 10,000.
Well, yeah, but like if we had 100,000 slaves who made it, wouldn't it be like a million who initially like went on the boat across? That's correct.
Yes.
Yeah, that's correct. Okay, I can do math. Good.
Mm-hmm.
But to just get back to the point I was trying to get at, sorry about that whole tangent about numbers, but to just drill in that, say if 100,000 made it there originally, you know, there was a million that died. There was 900,000 that died on the way there. Those are the numbers we're looking at here. That's a lot of people. That's a lot of people. And this isn't like today when we have 7 billion people. The world was a lot smaller back then, a lot smaller.
A lot smaller. They didn't have
Mm-mm.
the technical advances that we do now with medicine.
Mm-mm. 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 But I
It's
think
deep
that's,
to think about. It's deep to think about. Like this is what they went through, and like these are our ancestors. and what they have to go through.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but I think that's a good place to wrap it up this time.
Yeah. So this concludes chapter 1. Like concludes it all. The next time that we're on here, we are going to begin chapter 2. I'm really excited about starting chapter 2. I hope everyone else is excited. Chapter 1 has been, chapter 1's been a lot to swallow. It's been a lot to process. Chapter 2 will probably be a lot to process as well.
This whole thing.
This whole thing, it really is.
Not
And
the most. It isn't.
I just want to like remind you guys
about
that like we're not professionals. We're not professors. We're college students reading this textbook, and we're sharing our thoughts and opinions and what we think. Like I know some of you guys will probably be like, what in the world? Why did this girl like say this? But it's just from our experiences and like what we're still going through it as we're like learning and as we're seeing what's being told to us by the news and how we're progressing and stuff. So this concludes chapter 1. I want to say thank you for Jackson for being on here with me today. We thought this was going to be short, but we some talkers up in here, so we lied to ourselves. But we had a good conversation. I want to thank you though for being on here and keeping it alive with your little head, with your little bonnet on your head.
Into a bonnet? Ah, dang! Another bonnet joke. Come on, Sierra.
Come on now, like it's different from the other bonnet that you wore.
It's different. It's the exact same one. Wait, okay.
I think it might be just different angles. Maybe different angles.
Okay, different angles. There we go.
Angles. Okay. But that concludes. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I hope you guys will tune in for chapter 2. All right, guys. We'll see you later.